Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Bosch Legacy Season 1, Episode 6. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I kept bringing it up last episode, I knew the other shoe was going to drop with this whole Carl Rogers thing. Did not 100% play out the way I thought it would, but I figured they'd probably eventually, the Brockfield would catch up to him and pop him. But I just didn't expect the turn of events. For one, first and foremost, why would those cops take anything? I mean, I don't know. It just feels weird. It's like, this is the criminal you're looking after. And he's like, oh, I'm going to brew you up some coffee. I'm like, why would you accept anything this man, you do know he's orchestrated multiple, that's why I'm like, why would you do that? Maybe they weren't aware. I just think that was stupid on their part. And even later on, the other guy was just like, when he found his, the other marshals knocked out, he was like, these idiots. I'm like, that was stupid on your part. Why would you take anything from this man considering all that he's done? Because let's not forget one of the people who was killed in, by his hired hitman was a judge. Are we completely forgetting about that? Okay. Man, whatever the case may be, Carl Rogers manages to get away. Obviously, with all the groundwork she set up, Chandler wasn't happy about that. It's even interesting because her and Maddie were having a conversation about it at the beginning of the episode. How Maddie felt like after everything he's done, it feels like he's just kind of getting away with it. Especially for her, because she's like, right, I'm sitting here where I was talking to Robertson, I thought you were going to die because of him. And, Chandler says with all that he's done, they're not going to give him any leniency with all the deaths and his age and everything. He's most likely going to die in prison. They're going to make sure he lives long enough to serve out that time, the rest of his life in prison. So, but to get this situation now, and it's like, ugh. So now they end up having to track him down because I didn't talk about it, but last episode they got these stuff from Simon's phone. It was like dimensions to some container. We find out that it's a shipping container that he's planning on leaving the country through. So Bosch and her go to different places. She goes to where he ultimately ends up being, but the Brockfield already showed up because they already killed his lawyer. So poor bastard. His girlfriend lucked out because she actually didn't know. She's super lucky that. And I guess it speaks volumes about Carl. He was like, she's just kind of, she's not worth letting her know where my situation is, where I'm at. I'm not it just seemed like, I'm going to go. And I think that saved her life because if she had been in contact with him, probably would have gotten killed. So the Brockfield kind of threatens her and it's like, oh, don't worry. That cockroach doesn't deserve you. Don't worry. We will squish him for you. So Jasmine got super lucky in that regard. His lawyer, not so much. Poor bastard got wrapped up in a carpet or something. Then when they took him to that container and then they went back in and they were hiding their car, I was like, oh, you're waiting for him to show up. And I love that. And I was scared for Chandler the entire time. I'm like, your phone's please tell me your phone's not on loud. I think maybe I'll be okay in that circumstance. Vibrating can still probably screw you over. But I should also note, I'm rarely the person who ever keeps my phone off of vibrate. For most of my life, I've been that person. I've kind of had to change that recently, just in case family's trying to contact me for assortment of reasons. So I try, but more often than not, for most of my life, I've always kept my phone on vibrates. But I'm always worried about that stuff. You're like, oh, please tell me you set your phone to vibrate. But it was set to vibrate. You're like, okay, good. But I was also scared. They might still hit the vibration anytime, Bosch was texting her, trying to figure out, you texted me, you've got to, she didn't finish texting him, and he's texting, triple question marks. What was that about? And when Carl Rogers shows up, I was like, what's she going to do? Is she going to try and warn him? But I'm also like, well, you kind of want the bastard dead, so you're thinking he probably deserves what he gets. And if you go out there, Carl's going to make too much noise. It's like, do you really want to, potentially put your own life in danger to save this bastard? And it's like, nope. Bastard goes in there. He's so smug and everything. He's like, yeah, I got away. Ha, ha, ha. I'm winning. Opens the door, and they blast his ass. Excessively. The fact of the matter is, Baba ends up popping him in the head. Then the other two come pop shells in his stomach. I'm like, that was unnecessary. But I guess it's right. You want to send a message and you want to make a point. So they end up closing and bouncing. And so Chandler ends up sitting down with Bosch later. And it's right. He kind of deserved it. And Bosch is like, yeah. Could not have happened to a worse human being. So it's, yeah. Because let's not forget one of the people that was killed by his hitman was, like I said, the judge, who was someone that Bosch cared about very much. So it's kind of like, yeah, guy deserves. He also tried to come for my daughter, came for you too, killed a whole bunch of other people. So screw him. He's not a good person. But it's like, right, we're going to keep this between us. We're not going to let anyone else know that we know about this. We're also not going to let Maddie know. Even though Maddie would probably feel better knowing, but probably finding out that Chandler kind of let that happen, didn't do anything to really stop it. I'm on, because literally the entire time through my mind, I'm like, well, she kind of got what she wanted, and she didn't even have to do it herself. It's like, karma got that bastard in the long run. It's like, yeah, probably should have went with the deal that Chandler was offering you, because you going off on your own literally led to your own demise. Like, if you had actually gone through what Chandler wanted you to do, you might actually still be alive right now, but whatever. But I think that's so fascinating. So they're just kind of keeping that their secret. And because literally no one else, because everyone else is like, oh, Carl is going somewhere. Because probably like that shipping container, they probably won't know that Carl's in there until someone opens it. Because the only other person that would know where Carl is his lawyer, which him and his lawyer are in the exact same spot in that shipping container. Well, his lawyer's in the back and Carl's like out front the moment you open the container. So it's not until that shipping container gets put somewhere and opened up will they find his body. So, but until then, it's just like, oh, he's missing. But it's like, right, the Bratva's after him. So they're most likely, it's like, yeah, he's kind of assumed to be dead. And I guess she kind of has to hide that from her boss that obviously she knows. Because she's saying like, right, we could still kind of go through with the civil suit and get some money for the people involved. But it's only if like his assets and stuff turn up. Which I think that's where she's kind of like a little sour. I think not sour, but like she frowns a little after that conversation with Martin. Because I think it's like, right, they won't know where to get his assets. At least... because I think the money and stuff didn't go through because he hadn't go talk to the... So the civil suit's going to, like, it's still just going to be up in the air. They can still go through it, but they'll never get any actual money. And that also means that the judge's daughter won't know that, like, right, the guy responsible for your mom's death, he didn't just get away, because her and Maddie are just going to be under the assumption he got away. It's like, they'll probably... think like maybe the Bratva will catch up to him, but they won't know for sure. So I don't see Chandler saying anything because she promised Bosch she wouldn't say anything to Maddie. So we'll see. But it's like, yeah, this was all a me, because I think she feels bad too because she convinced the judge's daughter to wasn't it Bella, like, to get involved in all of this. She wanted to kind of just move on, but Chandler trying to slow Carl Rogers down ended up kind of pushing her to do this. So it's like, right, she kind of doesn't get anything out of it. She just knows, oh, the guy got away. Maybe the Bratva got to him, but I will never know for sure. Because yeah, that shipping container is supposed to go to Vietnam, so they won't know. But Vietnam's also like got no extradition, but it's like, right, they won't know until they open it. Be like, oh, we found a dead body. So it's probably going to be a long while before we find out about Carl Rogers. And I think it's interesting, too, because I'm like, is this the last we see of the Bratva? Like, would they have any other reason to stick around? Because by killing off him, it's like, right, we did what we came to do. Let's move on. There's, like, literally no other reason to be here. Because even Harry's like, yeah, they probably went back to Russia. This was, like, the last bit of business they had to clean up. And, like, all the business ties, like, died with him. So there's no more dealing with that. So I think we're done with the Bratva for now. But some other interesting elements in the episode. The detective that arrested Jerry for that doctor's murder is not Jerry, Jeffrey. Arrested Jeffrey for the doctor's murder is basically trashing Harry and Chandler, saying like, oh, they let someone slip through the cracks. But Harry's like, no, while he's off here busy trying to say Jerry's the one that did, I keep doing that, Jeffrey did it, and, you know, the real killer's still out there. So Bosch, you know, finagling on Chandler's part, she basically is like, oh, I'm hiring you to kind of basically continue proving that it wasn't Jerry. Jeffrey, I'm sorry, just because Jerry's in the episode, that's screwing me up. We'll get to that later on. But Jeffrey, continue to prove his innocence. Like, I need you to go out there and investigate and find out the real killer. Doesn't do too much investigating on that part, because he's mainly dealing with the Vance situation, because it turns out Vance signed an official will. Because the moment the pen came, I was like, oh, hey, the golden pen. I'm like, right. I'm like, so why would he send that to Bosch? Turns out he had written a handwritten will I forgot what the term that Chandler used. It means like a handwritten will, but it was like a very fancy, very specific name. And basically everything kind of goes to Bosch right now, and Ida gets like 10 million. So it's like, yeah, like he knew to trust Ida. Once again, I still feel like there's got to be more with that. I'm wondering what Ida's connection is. Like, was it like, he's like, right, she's like, you didn't even know, sir. And I'm like, what was that about? Because part of me was like thinking for a second, I'm like, I don't think so. I didn't bring it up last episode. I was like, but you don't think they're going to set up to be like Ida's actually his grandchild or something? I was like, I don't think that's going to be the case. I guess it could be, but I don't see that being the case. I think it might just be like, oh, she's someone that loved them, but she knows something, and she's like, right, you just didn't even know. I was right here in front of you for 40 years, and you didn't know. So I'm like, last episode I was like, maybe it's a love thing, but in the back of my mind I was like, I don't think she could be his kid, but I mean grandchild, but who knows? I'm leaning more towards, like I said, like, oh, she was secretly in love with him, he just never knew. Obviously, Harry's biggest concern is like, right, I need to find this heir situation, and ultimately, because that's why I feel like it definitely can't be Ida. Like like I said, I'm throwing it out there, but I'm like 99% sure. I'm like, no, she can't be the grandchild. Like the grandchild of someone else, because Ida's just got. It could be the thing of like he didn't know, but I still just don't feel like that's going to be the case. But Harry's still going to be investigating this, looking for the heir. And he's got to keep these papers secure, can't let anyone else find out about him while he's continuing his investigation. Secretly meet with Ida, because Ida's the one he turned to get these papers secretly to Harry, to try and, because both of them are, I mean, all of them, Harry, probably Ida, and Chandler are all being watched, because Harry ends up noticing he's being followed from the bank because he tried to put that all in like a safety deposit box. And he ultimately ends up confronting Crichton. It's like, oh, you want to threaten me or even bribe me? If I was a cop, he's like, yeah, but you're not a cop anymore, are you? And it's like, yep, the problem with not having that badge, he kind of doesn't have any authority. And you know, Harry just want to go over and punch him in the face or something, because it's like, oh, you bastard. And he's like, hey, there's some powerful people involved. Once again, Chandler reminds him this episode, and Vance said it from the very beginning. There are billions of dollars at stake here. So there's a lot of people who are, you know, you are an obstacle in this. Once again, especially for Phil, it's like all this is coming to him, so everyone is incentivized to keep him happy and make him, because he probably made a lot of promises about like, right, once I'm in this position, I'm gonna shake hands and help everybody out and give everyone a little slice of the pie. So it's probably in everyone's best interest, in Crichton's particular best interest, to keep Philip like happy, you know, so make sure he gets what he needs to get. Once again, they're still unclear about there being an error, but they're at least aware, like, right, you're still investigating, even though Vance is dead. So we'll see where things kind of go from there on that front. He does visit Potter. I love that this episode, yeah, we're getting like from a whole bunch of familiar faces we ain't seen in a hot minute. And I was like, yeah, it feels like a lot of familiar faces, because we've already got the Doc. Obviously, he wasn't in the original series much. He only popped up mainly in the first season. I think he popped up like maybe once or twice here and there, and then like maybe in the final season he popped up in like one episode. That's about it. Because Harry did like a favor, like that music box and stuff. That was his daughter he was helping out at the beginning. So him, and now we got Potter, who confirms like it's unclear about Vance's death. So kind of leaning into what I brought up last episode, maybe we're going to find out it wasn't natural causes. Maybe there was some foul play involved. Have to wait and see on that front. We also got Mank this episode too. And I was like, the moment like what was it, Captain Thorne or whatever referenced Mank, I was like, he was like, oh, go see Mank. I was like, are we going to see Mank? And we saw Mank. I was like, yeah, we saw Mank. And then as I mentioned earlier, Jerry, I was like, the moment the car pulled up, I was like, yo, we saw a little bit of his face. I was like, yo, is that my boy Jerry? I'm like, yeah, Jerry. Even if it's in these cameo appearances, because obviously like they still exist in this world. They're just like working in different capacities. But it's like, it was nice seeing them together again. Oh, how, you know, it's RHD to you. And it's, oh, that's good, you know. And it's like, how you doing, brother? No, I'm good too. Doing good too. And I love that Harry is like, right, who's the one person he knows he could trust more so than anyone else with this? And he gives it to Jerry. I'm like, yeah, man, I love that so much. I was like, yeah. Seeing Jerry, seeing Mank, it was so good, dude. I love it. So, because I think, I don't know if we're going to see her this season, but I thought I did see something legacy related with Billet. It might have been a picture, but it might have been something more so like Bosch related, not necessarily Bosch legacies, but yeah, it's still in that realm. Because I'd like to get some updates about some of those characters, see where they are. We once again, like some of these characters, like Potter, Mank, and Jerry, literally popped. Jerry was in it for like what 2-3 minutes, maybe. Same thing for Mank. He was in. They're basically in it for only one scene, so these are pretty much, I'd say, like cameos at best, you know, and I think that's all we'll really get, because the main focus are these new characters continuing Harry, Chandler, and Maddie's stories, while also introducing these new character stories. Since I brought Chandler up, I do want to circle back to something I should have talked about, but I kind of let it slip my mind. Last time we see Chandler in the episode, she's shredding everything related to Craig. Did I say Craig? Carl Rogers. And she's kind of like, finally able to put it to bed. But we see her at a table and she's kind of like moving her neck back and forth. I think it's just, she thought like all this would, satisfy something. But even then, I don't think it 100% took the edge off. I think she's still going to be dealing with it. She's still going to have to go through her paces when it comes to it. So I don't think that's the end of the road for her. I think that's still going to be something she deals with. But him being dead, maybe that lightens the load. Even if it's just the tiniest bit, it's going to help to some extent. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see kind of the aftermath of all of this for Chandler. But another angle to this episode is Maddie kind of dealing with kind of a complicated reality of this job, and that is her friend Paulina, a fellow classmate. They were doing like a routine stop, and they stopped a vehicle, and the guy shot Pauline. And obviously, it doesn't look good. Obviously, Harry, hearing about it on the radio, freaked out. And I think it's interesting the shoe is now on the other foot, because for so long, because there were moments even in the original series where Maddie was like, hey, I heard something about a homicide detective. It's like, no, I did cop it. It wasn't me. And it's like, okay. So she was always worried about him. Now the shoe is on the other foot. He has to worry about her, and knowing that she's okay. And just, it's like, right. She's like, what do I do? Because she went to talk to Mank, and Mank is telling her to be the one that, to help with notification, which she's like, wait, what? It's like, this is one of your fellow officers. And he was like, you should be there, and it's like, she's like, well, what should I say to do? It's like, just be there, like if the parent ever needs it. So Maddie asked her dad for advice, and he's like, right, you'll find the words. And what came to his mind is when he notified Maddie about Eleanor, and which comes back a little bit later on, but Maddie does, and she was with that, was it a RHD officer, I think, and she was like, right, what's the plan? He's like, the plan? He's like, this never gets any easier no matter how many times you do it. And Maddie's just there to tell her, like, no, your daughter's alive, she's at the hospital, they're doing everything they can to help her. And it's just, once again, the reality of it, because she's like, right, she's trying to figure out, what did Paulina do wrong? And Harry's like, probably did everything by the book. Shit happens. Like, no matter how careful you are, things can still go wrong in this job. You just happen to pull over the wrong person, things just, because they weren't aggravating the dude, they just stopped him for whatever reason he felt like doing that. Which apparently, really quickly, Jerry is working that case, so I'm curious what that's all about. He had to have something in his car, or maybe he had some priors that he did, like he would have gotten in. I don't know, because I think the only reason why they got him was because he like ran a stop sign, like he rolled a stop sign and kept going. I think that's all there was, because didn't they say like the plates were clean or something like that? So they were probably just gonna like stop him to say like, hey, like what's going on? And I was thinking like, the way that scene was set up, I was like, oh my god, like her partner's going to get shot. I wasn't expecting Paulina to get shot. I thought it was going to be her partner, and that was going to be like, oh my god, this is wild, this is crazy. But it's like, of course, it makes more sense for Paulina to get shot, just because it's like, it's going to get Maddie thinking about everything, which even Harry was like, right. Did this make you reconsider anything? Because she was like, right, if Paulina ends up being okay and reconsiders all this, I completely understand. And Harry asked her the question, does this make her reconsider everything? And she's like, no. And so her and Harry talk about him getting shot, which was kind of an interesting circumstance. And he obviously didn't want to talk about it, but Maddie was like, no, I need to hear this story. I want to understand what Paulina is going through. I really want to understand what she's feeling. And so Harry talks about the robbery case that he was investigating. It turns out this case is actually what that movie of his is kind of based on. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, they kind of fucked that up. But, he's like, with my house in the condition it's in right now, I could use a windfall. And I love Matt. He's like, well, maybe if you look out, they'll remake it. I was like, that's funny. And there's meta layers to that, because obviously the movie is titled after, I want to say, the first book in the Harry Bosch series. So, and obviously the show is an adaptation of those. And now this show is kind of not even a reboot, just a continuation, a sequel. But it's like, just that I think there's a meta layer to that joke. I think it's fascinating. Because obviously it's like a wink and like a joke about like reboots and stuff like that. Makes you wonder, would Harry be opposed to, like, if they want to remake it, go ahead, do whatever you want to. Like, as long as I get get a check, it'll be fine. But he talks about the situation being as it is. The fact is, he went on his own, which Maddie's like, if I did that, you would have chewed me out. He's like, yep, do as I say, not as I do, Maddie. So he's like, yeah, my partner knew exactly where it was, which I was like, was that Jerry? And it's like, no, it's not. But the last robber who survived, because everyone else two were dead. Well, the third one eventually, one of the others ended up eventually dying from the gunfight. So it ended up being 3 dead, 2 were arrested. The last one was there. He ends up shooting Harry, and Harry's like, right, is this how my life's going to end? Like, dead like this in a sewer? And just when he thought his life was over, the FBI agent, and that was his partner in the case, shot and killed a suspect. And it was Eleanor, and you're like, holy crap. And she's like, is that why you married Mom? Because she saved your life? It's like, well, I was in love with her. I just didn't realize it at the time. And I think there's layers to that. Harry doesn't really go into it too much, but it's like, right, Eleanor saved his life. And I guess I can only assume Harry had, like, that's why Harry has so much regret. Like, that Eleanor thing already has a bit of a sting to it regardless, just like losing her like that. Maddie losing her mom, like, Harry and her were in a much better place than they were previously, I think. And this, regardless of everything, it's like, right, she's still the mother of your child. She's the woman that you still cared about, that you loved, and knowing that he was there and he couldn't do anything to save her is the most frustrating thing. I think that's what lays heavier on him, regardless of how, like, finishing things up and getting some justice for her, and like still not being able to save her, even though so many years ago she saved you. That stings a little extra for Harry. So I just thought that was just a neat little insight, and I think it kind of adds and kind of puts some perspective in things for Harry and Maddie when it comes to this whole thing. So I'm really interested to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Going to be another 2 episodes next week, so excited to see where 7 and 8 end up taking us. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.